If you were ever able to get inside my mind and hear my thoughts, you would hear that they fray in a bunch of different directions. Professionally, I was a hockey player, and now I'm a coach, so one would think that that's what I live and breathe, but that's not the case at all, actually. Though I love what I do, there is so much outside of the game that I'm hugely passionate about. I love music, guitars, motorcycles, the arts, and I've even come to love history and geography through my travels. My podcast is all about these things, and I speak with some really cool people that I've met throughout my career and let the conversation kind of take off. So join me inside my brain and welcome to my Motley Thoughts. Today, my guest is a person I've known since I was 18 years old and has been a close friend of mine to this day. He was an NHL goaltender, his pro career spanning from 1991 to 2008. Drafted by the New York Islanders, went on to play for 6 teams in the NHL. Also had a short trip to Russia and Japan. He is currently an analyst for TV's TSN. He does radio, plays a little guitar on the side, and apparently he has turned himself into a responsible human being. I am so happy to have on the podcast my dear friend, Mr. Jamie Noodles McLennan.
What's up? Responsible human being. I guess I had to grow up at some point. I mean, I am 49 years old. Tell me about it. Like, I don't know, if you have kids, does that make you responsible, or does it force you to be responsible? That's what it is.
I think it's the latter.
Yeah. I think so too. Although you were lucky, because like you had your kids at a young age, right? So you get, like, now you're like best friends with them. Like my 3-year-old is pointing out a bald spot on my head, like right now. Like, he doesn't care about me. He just is like, Daddy, you got a hole in your head. Like, he doesn't know. He's an idiot. He's 3. You know, you're like buddies with your kids and stuff. I think that's awesome. Like, by the time my kids are in high school and college, I'll probably be in a wheelchair. So it'll be, I started late. It's I envy you. You actually in a real nice space as far as family, where, I'm lucky. I guess that way I kind of waited for my career to be over and all that in hockey before I settled down. But just different ends of the spectrum when it comes to that, for sure.
Well, most of my friends in the hockey world, especially the hockey world, waited. So I was like the only dude with kids. And hey, trust me, like, don't paint this picture like I knew what I was planning or doing. Like, 0 of the 4 kids were planned. If anything, I was making mistakes every way along there. But it ended up, as we went along, I started seeing my friends having kids, and I was like, you know what? It's kind of nice that mine are kind of growing up and leaving now, and also, like you said, I get to enjoy being kind of buddies and dudes with them. Is like right now is a good thing to be able to kind of connect in that way. You're still young and healthy too. Like, that's the thing. Like,
you like, they're adults too, so it's like you're along the journey, with their journey.
Yeah.
Whereas I'm still shaping my daughter will be 8 this weekend. So, I'm still helping with, math homework and just, try to get through. I mean, it's crazy times right now anyways. Like, we're both kids are on, and my 3-year-old son, he's on Zoom for 35 minutes every morning. And other than that, he's a disaster just running around the house. So I'm just at a different stage. Like, for you, like, your kids are grown up now, so you can actually, like, I'm sure on so many different levels, you get an opportunity to kind of just, have these, like, I follow you on Instagram and that, like, you get to see, like, how your family's evolved and grown, but you're all adults now. So yeah, I'm sure the dinners are great, the conversation and just hanging out where, you know, for me, I'm like, you know, pick that up, or you just made crumbs because you threw your pizza on the ground because you're 3, and you know, like, so it's just different. We're just different stages. So, you know,
No, it's pretty cool. It's
kind of
funny.
cool.
My I think it was my wife asked was saying that something about your family and asked the names of your kids, and I was like, you know, to tell you the truth, I only know them as Fool and Dink or,
The
or whatever,
Dinkus.
the Dinkus or whatever. Because and then I scrolled down to your Instagram and I was literally, I could not find one
Yeah.
post that showed their names.
Well, my daughter's name is Dylan and my son's
Okay.
name is Quinn. But
Okay.
like, even my wife and I, we have like this, you know, language, like we'll be like, how's the Dink doing? And that's the boy. And then how's the Fool doing? That's, you know, the girl. Like, we just have some fun with it, because I think, you know, my wife's younger than me, but she's, you know, we're kind of on the same page as far as, hey, we're in this together. And, you know, the kids are, you know, I guess one silver lining of this pandemic is that we, you know, really are, we've gotten a lot of time with them. Whereas, you know, during the season, I'm so busy calling games and, you know, and traveling and, you know, at the studio a lot, where I've missed out on a lot of key things. So now I've had 8 or 9 straight months with them. So it's been great that way. I'll look back on this eventually, maybe 2-3 years from now, and go, hey, I was pretty lucky to be around at that time. But yeah, I mean, as far as you know me, I like to joke around a lot. So when it comes to my family, I'm obviously very proud. But you know, I like to joke around. Like, my kids are my kids. Unfortunately, like, my son has the same flappers, the same
I
ears.
saw.
and Dylan, my daughter, thankfully is starting to shift towards looking like Steph, which helps, because you don't want my face with a blonde wig. So it's good. You can tell at that point. Like, I would always tease my wife that she was just a carrier, and I was like that, because both kids came out with my face on it. So they're good. They're happy kids, and
Good.
you know, I think you just knock on wood for health at that point with kids, and you know, no matter what age and that, you just want them to be happy and healthy.
Yeah, no, they seem, when I first, you know, been following you on Instagram and stuff, I noticed how much they looked like you, and it's kind of funny because all the boys look exactly like me, and look nothing like my wife, like, at all.
Yeah.
And it was kind of funny when I saw that. I was like, but now you're right, your daughter's turning into a pretty little girl and starting
Yeah.
to not look like you as
Thank
much.
God.
So, hey, I was going to ask you kind of mentioned about your career, and are you actually doing all your stuff from the house now?
Yeah, I'm actually this is my office. So, backstory, I actually called the last NHL game before the pandemic. So I don't know if you remember Rudy Gobert, or whatever, the NBA player who got it. And he was the guy who was touching the microphones and stuff like that, kind of acting silly because he had tested positive. The NBA shut down on March 11th. So I was traveling with the Senators, and the Senators had played Anaheim the night before and got rinsed. And then LA was the next night, the back-to-back. So that was a Wednesday, March 11th. And because we were on the West Coast, that was the last NHL game. So it was whatever, a 10:30 Eastern start. So I was out there, and what's weird about me is I track, like, I don't even want to say current events, but I track kind of weird things all the time. So I've been watching this coronavirus, like, overseas and in China get big. And I remember even in February talking to one of my broadcast partners, Gord Miller, about it and saying, I'm worried about this. I think it's coming. And you'd give me shit and be like, you know, Jamie, you're just being a hypochondriac. He's like, you know, the flu's everywhere. And I would get into a hotel room and I'd spray it down with Lysol. I was constantly washing my hands and had Purell. And as it got to that day in March, you could see the numbers, like it arrived in Canada, it arrived in the US, and you and I have talked about it on, you've got your own crazy stories, obviously, for the COVID. But for me, that night, it was an eerie feeling because it was myself and Chris Cuthbert, and the building was like maybe half full, quarter full. And I know LA wasn't going to make the playoffs, and LA Ottawa is not your banner marquee matchup, just both teams that were in rebuilds, right? But it was a weird feeling. And just before the game, my producer got into my ear and he said, "Hey, the NBA shut down. It wouldn't surprise me if we're going to." So we called the game, went and had a beer afterwards, and flew home. And the next day I did a show in studio, and that was a Friday. And they said, "You're shut down. Like we're gonna put a studio in your house." So this is my office, and I brought up a bunch of stuff actually, because I'm not as vain as this looks. You know what I mean? Like I don't need to be walking in and going, "Hey, there's my mask, and there's a picture of me," and like we had to create something for TV, the look. So they had one of their IT guys come and hook me up, on an iPhone, but then there's a tie line for radio, and it's just a whole setup here with lighting. And this is my backdrop for TV. So basically, in a nutshell, within a day, I had been pivoted home, and I haven't left since. And we got a note the other day saying, "Don't even think you're coming back to studio until the end of April earliest." So they're already looking ahead as to, hey, we're going to ride this winter out. So I'm fine at home, other than the fact that, like, even on yesterday's show, I was late getting back to the show because I was warming up some brisket, and I lost track of time in the break. And you get a 3-minute break, and I set it for 2.5 minutes, and then I'm having a conversation with my wife and Nanny. And I'm like, I look at I see an empty chair on TV. I run back to the studio, and guys are giving me heck. But you know what? I like working from home. It's a 40-minute commute to the studio back and forth, so it saves me 80 minutes. I feel like I'm more efficient, although I miss just the interaction, right? Like just BSing with people and, all of that. The world is upside down, but I've tried to just make it the best possible right now. So this is my home studio, and I'll be here for, unless I start calling NHL games, I think we'll be doing it off TV, probably from the studio, but ultimately I'll be here for the next little while.
Cool. Regarding your career, I never really ever asked you, like you did a short stint for coaching with coaching, and that's kind of I thought where you're going to be headed, and then all of a sudden, next thing you know, Noodles is on television. and did it kind of just fall into your lap, and you kind of tested it out, or were you like, man, I want to be this?
No, it was weird because the day I decided to retire, so I went to, got to figure this out. So the Flames, I ended my career with the Flames, and Daryl Sutter was great because Daryl said to me, he goes, "Hey, we're not going to sign you. We're going to let you go. We're going to head a different direction." But he said, "I don't know if you want to play anymore," but he said, "The minute you retire, I've got a job for you. I'll figure something out." And I said, "That's great." So I knew I had that in my back pocket. And then my agent, who is Pat Morris from Newport, I was sitting in Calgary end of June, and he calls me and he said, "I've got a job in Russia for you." And the money was, as you know, the KHL pays, most of them do, not all of them do, but like the KHL claims to pay, put it that way. And so I looked at it, and it was Magnitogorsk, which is, I don't even know if you've made that trip or not, but
yeah, I did.
Yeah. So you went to the cement bunkers there, but I didn't even know where the hell this thing was. It was 800 miles southeast of Moscow. And so I'm looking at it, and my agent says, "Hey, you know what, just treat it like you're going to jail for 6 months, and you get paid when you get released," type of thing. Like, we were joking because I'd never been over there. Right. So I thought it was a new challenge. So I went over. I was there 6 to 8 weeks, and didn't work out. It was weird because I thought I played pretty well for them. And I think they thought, okay, here's an NHL goalie. You need to put up a shutout every night. And like, that's a good league. Like there's like, we were playing UFA one night and we lose 3-2 and I stopped like 50 shots and like, they're pissed at me. So I'm like, dude, like what are you talking about? I made 50 saves and like backdoor one-timers and stuff. Like that league has a lot of skill. And so it was just a weird setup and they didn't like me. And by the end, I didn't kind of like them. So it just didn't work. I called my agent. I was like, get me out of here. So gets me out of here. I'm going to join the Flames. And then Joel Dick calls me and says, do you want to end your career with me in Japan, the pawn paper, the Cranes? So went over there and loved it. As you can speak to that for many years that you were there. Like I loved the people. I loved, even the Northern Island of Hokkaido is just, it was different than Tokyo, obviously, but I loved the whole setup. I thought the people were amazing. I thought the hockey was better than people give it credit for.
Oh, for sure.
And then, so I retired and played in Japan, retired. And Daryl the next day was like, okay, you're starting, in player development. You're going to do scouting. You're going to do it all the first year. And I got a taste of everything. Like I was in on all like big meetings. I was doing some stuff behind the scenes for Daryl. So it was great. And then the next year he put me into coaching and he said, I'd like you to be the goalie coach, but he said on paper, I'm going to make you, it's called the assistant coach, but I was really just the goalie coach. And so I did that for 2 years. And the second year, like was a bit bumpy. Kipper was up and down. Our team wasn't great. I don't think we made the playoffs, or maybe we did, but I don't even remember. It's been 10, 11 years now. But at the end of the year, my contract was up and they were going to renew it or they were going to let me go. And Jay Feaster was the manager at the time. And he said, we're not going to renew you as the goalie coach, but we'd like you to stay in the organization. And I was kind of like, all right, I don't know if I want the pivot. And they wanted me to kind of relocate too. So I said, give me a week. And as I left the office, obviously it had leaked that the Flames weren't renewing contracts. So it's, the coaching staff got fired or whatever. TSN emailed me, the head of hockey department. We call him the Quizmaster. The Quizmaster emailed me and said, hey, would you be interested in doing some TV? We'd like to try you out on the panel. And that was like, I'm not lying, Dusty. It was an hour after I left Feaster's office. Like it was, I could already, wow. I already saw my name on the ticker. I was sitting at lunch having a beer and Flames coaches get fired or whatever, McLennan. I can't remember who else was let go at that time. And I get an email saying, hey, would you like to be on the panel this weekend to try you out? And at that time, TSN had the national rights. So the panel was national games. And it was James Duthie, it was Bob McKenzie. I think Craig McTavish was there. And so they had a panel. So they flew me into Toronto, and I was really raw. Like, you're sitting there, and there's cameras, and there's a lot of moving parts, and you got a producer talking in your ear, and James Duthie, you're intimidated. The lights are bright, and I'll never forget. Duthie asked me a question. I go to talk, and a big piece of spit comes flying out of my mouth, and I'm watching it in slow motion. Head towards Duthie. I'm like, oh my God, I just spit on national TV. And so it was kind of, it was intimidating, but I mean, I'm sure I was awful, but I think that they were like, we got something we could work with here.
Right.
So I did that a couple times. And then when they were done, I told the Quizmaster, I said, I'd like to do more, because if you want me to do this, I need reps. Like I need to work at this. Like, hockey, like you need coaching, right? Like coaches tell you, hey, we want you to work on this. Where in media, it was just like, hey, here's a microphone, here's a camera. Like we're going to ask you some questions. Like it was kind of trial by fire. So TSN radio had just started. So they put me on TSN radio and they put me on a show called That's Hockey with Gino Reda. So they were trying to, give me as much experience as it could. And honestly, now this is my, I think, 10th year.
10th year, eh?
10 years
wow,
later.
It's been that long.
Wow. I think this is my 9th or 10th year. Like it is that long. Like and obviously like at that time I was single. I moved out to Toronto and reconnected with my wife, and I had dated previously, and then we reconnected because she works for TSN.
Right.
And so it ended up working out that way. And I guess you could say the rest is history, although every day's you never know. You're one wrong comment away from who knows what. But I think for the most part, I've been put on good shows. TSN's been really good to me. But I try to be good to them too, because I love doing color. Like I do a lot. Like I do color commentating for the Senators and a little bit of the Leafs when Ray Ferraro can't make it. I'm on a show called Overdrive every day from 4 to 7, which is TV and radio. I do That's Hockey. I do Sports Center. So I kind of got 4 or 5 gigs at TSN. So it's busy, but I enjoy it. Like put it that way. That's kind of how it started. And
that's so
like
cool.
I say, 10 years later, I'm still doing it.
Right on. No, that's awesome. So now we talked about your career, which I think is totally cool that you jumped into the television realm of things. I wanted to go a little lighter. I'll start with this, how we came to know each other. The short version is Jamie and I played together in junior in Lethbridge in the WHL. Yep. Long version, a little longer version is I started with the New Westminster Bruins, got traded to Lethbridge, and kind of got myself as supposedly like the number 1 guy, and they were trading away the other goalie. So they made a trade. This shit's funny to me. It might not be funny to anyone else. They made a trade with Spokane for a couple players, one being a goalie, and who is going to be my goalie partner. And it's this guy named Jamie McLennan. And he shows up, and I think I would have been 18, you'd have been 17.
Yeah.
And it's so funny when I think back at this, because you're so different. You seem really shy, and I don't know what I can say or can't say anymore, but I would have said back in the day, Indian, Native, Canadian, or Indigenous. Sorry, I never know. Anyway, so Indigenous. I thought you were.
I was to this day, people. I mean, I do have Indigenous. I have actually. Side story. I've gone on to Ancestry because I was like, my whole life people have been like, you're Indigenous. So I'm like, I need to figure out if the mailman was Indigenous or something. And I do have it. So you know what? Right. Ultimately, there is Indigenous.
There is a little bit.
So like, there you go. So this Indigenous player shows up. Yes.
So, and along with, I think it was Kevin St. Jacques, right?
Yeah, Jocko. Me and Jocko
show up. And I remember, I think it was like somewhere like Moose Jaw or some visiting rink, and your gear was already there. And I'm like waiting for this guy to show up, and you walk in, and I'm like, I'm talking to you, and I could barely get 2 words out of you. You're real quiet. And anyways, it turned into a long, forever friendship. We went through a lot when you think about it, it's quite a short time, 2 years together, but we built, it's kind of, there's only a few, you have lots of friends throughout your hockey career, but there's like the select few that you kind of just stay connected with. We don't see each other ever because of our careers and where we live, but I've always held our friendship dear to my heart, and we stayed close ever since. But I asked you before the pod to think of a couple stories, because man, we don't get to talk about them enough, but there are some doozies, and I haven't told a lot of them for a long time. And as I was thinking last night, writing them down, I started remembering. I got a shitty memory, but I got a couple. I want to let you say one first before I go ahead, because I got a couple.
All right. I mean, again, if this was 10 years ago, we'd probably be able to
tell different stories.
Yeah, tell different stories. It's just, what, I the first and foremost, I'll go back to getting traded, because intimidated. Like, I had lived in Lethbridge, so I actually knew the city. I knew the Dick family, Joel and Mike Dick,
right.
Because I played bantam there, so I had the familiarity with the city. I was fine. The intimidation factor was okay, I was just trying to establish myself as a junior player. Like I hadn't done that, in Spokane.
Right.
I come in, Dusty, you're a really popular guy as it is. You're a popular player in the room. You're a good goaltender. And I'm just like scared shitless. So, you're like, you walk in the room and you're like, okay, I'm just trying to like stay. I'm just trying to be a WHL player. So there was no like, I wasn't threatened or didn't feel threatening to you other than the fact that I was like, I don't even know what I am as a player yet at that level. So what was great was, right away, like I knew once I relaxed, we would be fine because your personality and my personality mesh, right? Like we like to joke around, so it just took time. So you were really good to me. And as I settled in, that's when I started to open up a little bit. But all I remember, I mean, I'm not going to, like, all of our stories are around alcohol, a lot of them. And you're still allowed, as long as you don't drink and drive, you're still allowed to tell alcohol stories.
Right.
So my favorite, there's a million of them. My favorite stories are more about, us just hanging out. We had a core group of guys and we would, it would be house A, house B, whether that was, Benny's, whatever, girlfriend's grandparents' house, whatever that house by the Sandman Hotel was. There was like, I think her name was Candace. It was like Candace's grandparents' house that we used to like go over and drink. And so, we'd all get together and it was like, okay, beers, and it was laughs, and then there was cigarettes. And then if they're like, you would bring the guitar out and we get the guitar, and I had no game. If I was single at the time. So if I like wanted to meet a girl at the bar or anything like that, you were kind of like my voice. They're like, yeah, Jamie's a good guy, Jamie. And, like it was almost like we'd invite people back to the house, have some drinks, you'd get the guitar out, and like you would be almost like, helping me along to try and meet people. And I remember several nights of us, like just late nights too, which was weird because, and Dusty, I will say this, and I remember this, and I remember this like it was yesterday. There were times I would, early on go, I don't know if we should go. I don't know if we should go out. Like we're playing in 2 days or we're playing. Right. And you would say to me, Jamie, you're coming because they can't bench both of us. They need us. like if you went and got buckled and couldn't play, they would put me in. But you're like, if we were both messed up, it's like we had to play. Like they were stuck with us. So it was like you and I were tied together to everything because it was like they needed the goalies. Like and so it didn't matter who it was. And all I remember is that like one time, a very late night, and I think we were playing the next day, and you were like,
I got that one on my list.
Okay, then I will let you tell that one because I was like, I don't know how we're going to make it through this game. And this is a junior. I'm like, oh, God.
I can't remember what game it was. That part I don't remember. But I do remember saying some of those words along those lines of, because you really didn't want to be out at the. Right. I think it was at my house.
It was like because you had that little billet that we used to. Is it Henderson?
Yeah.
Is that his name?
Yeah.
And he was very thin at the time, very thin. And Clark Pogolays would pick him up and pretend he was a pool cue, and like. But he was such a nice kid. He always hung around, right? But like he was like, I think he was like because he was young at the time. Yeah. And I think he was kind of a guy who just liked to hang. Yeah, he was our stick boy. I think he liked to just hang around us. But we would have a few at your place, and then, I would be like, I think we got to shut it down.
I think that night you were trying to say, hey, I think we should shut it down because it's the next night. It was the next night, and
right.
Hey, we learn, we grow from our experiences, and I'm not going to deny I did some stupid shit along the way, and that would be one of them. But I remember telling you, hey, Lauxi can't bench both of us. So,
Right.
I made sure, and I think you're going to play that. So I made sure you weren't getting hammered, but you also,
Right.
I wasn't going to let you leave. The other one I was going to tell, or I wanted, I have no problem talking about, and this is me. So, it's not regarding you.
Right.
And it's in my past, and I've learned from things. But I remember the Rockford Files.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Or Mark Gregg and
Yeah, we were out, and like you said, we'd go out and be together and hang out, and I'd had a few, and we were leaving the parking lot, and I think it was Mark Gregg's Trans Am or whatever he
but
had.
that's the thing though, and I'll jump on this quickly, Dusty, is
Yeah.
there was nothing illegal there. We were of age to drink, and the guy who was driving the car hadn't been drinking. So there was nothing other than the fact that you decided that you were going to jump on top of a car. So that's where.
But here's the thing. When I did it, and I remember what I was thinking. I was just trying to be funny because there was a sunroof so I could look down, and I said, like, "You're not leaving," kind of thing. And Mark Gregg just decided he was going to drive off with me on the top of his freaking car, and not just drive off, but start spinning the wheel back and forth as he's leaving the parking lot. And my feet started swaying back and forth. And sure enough, he did one quick turn and I went, poof.
And you rolled.
And I rolled.
Like you did the somersaults through the parking lot and then landed there. And I was walking out. I remember seeing you.
I can't remember who it was, but it stuck. The name stuck in the story that someone, was it Polglaze or you?
Clark Polglaze
said, "Holy fuck, Rockford Files,"
which was an old show, old police show.
Yeah. No, I remember that one, and the funny thing is, I don't know if it was after or before, but like I kind of damaged myself on that fall. But I did another one where I was riding my bicycle in the middle of the night, and I think I'd had a few, and I hit a manhole, like a big freaking manhole, and I went right over the handlebars hard, and I can't remember if it was my wrist or my shoulder or something, but I did something bad to my body, and I went into the rink and I told
Lauxi.
Is that how the story went, or did it?
You were riding your bike and you hit a manhole and went ass over tea kettle and hurt your shoulder and your elbow, and you were all road rashed up, and we were worried because all of us, like, we were playing the next day. And we were worried that we were going to get shit for being out. And what happened was you told Lauxi, you were like, "Hey, I just fell off my bike." And he pulled his shirt up and he's like, "It happened to me too." He had road rash because it just so happens that Lauxi had fallen off his bike, but he was just, he was actually doing it legally, driving around. Not legally, but he was just doing it in the, early night where you were in the middle of the night, you hit a manhole. And I had to play. I remember I had to play because you were unavailable. I think you had sublexed your shoulder, like popped in and out or something, and you were out a couple days. Where I think we had to call the kid up, Darcy Austin, to back me up. Yeah. So that was there was too many of those like little unfortunate incidents, but we made it through. And again, like it wasn't. I think you look back at it. It's adolescence, right? It's just us being stupid idiots. But I laugh and I can remember a lot of these stories like yesterday because they're part of like, shaping, you're shaping as growing as an adult and looking back at the mistakes and some of the decisions you made. But for the most part, like, we all had each other to help each other out. Like I'm still friends with Mark Gregg and Wes Walls and Jason Ruff, and you and I are still close. And, crazy enough, a couple of years ago, I'm flying from like, I think Edmonton to Toronto or something. And over the loudspeaker, here's your captain, Pete Berthelsen. I'm like, oh my God, is that
No
like,
way. Wow.
that Bert? Like, so I asked the flight attendant, I'm like, can you please, which was awkward. You can't be telling a flight attendant, can you get a message to the captain? Because like, you know, it was a terrorist or something.
Yeah.
So I said, just so you know, I'm a former junior hockey player for the Lethbridge Hurricanes. Can you please ask the captain if he was the captain of the Lethbridge Hurricanes? So sure enough, a note came back, and it was like, he used to call me Lemon Jello. He's like, Lemon Jello, it's me. After the flight, come and see me. So,
No way.
you know, we had a great visit, but that was, you know, like I say, you talk about lifelong friends and some of the bonds that we made.
Right.
That's 30 years ago that we played junior. And, you know, a couple of years ago, I'm running into Bert. You and I are still talking. Mark Gregg's son just got drafted by Ottawa. Like, you know,
I did not know that.
Yeah, he's at the World Junior Camps right now. Like, he's a good young player. Like, it's weird to see, you know, kind of the next wave. But I run into Mark Gregg all the time because he's pretty high up with Philadelphia, so he travels a lot. So I'll run into him randomly at the airport, and so it's nice to see a lot of these guys have gone on to have success. But it's, you know, Dusty, it comes back to those roots that we made and those friendships. So yeah, you know, sometimes maybe we were stupid on little things and decisions, having a few beers the night before a game. But it didn't change the fabric of what we are. If anything, it helped us, you know, grow as men. So I look back with my junior experience as like with fond memories. Like you know, I know other people have had different experiences with junior, and that's, you know, that's them, and I support them in their plight. But ultimately, what I went through in the 3 years that I played, I look back and, you know, it's the reason why you and I are talking today, because we've maintained a close friendship, and, you know, Mark Gregg and Walsey and that.
No, there's some great memories, and you nailed it when you said kind of shapes us a little bit and kind of turns us into who we are. Sometimes it doesn't go as well, but that has a lot to do with the person themselves. I find that even though I found a few of the things out a little too late, as far as the direction of my career and how it went, I do believe I wouldn't change it, because it's kind of turned me into who I am today, and makes me, a lot of what I did as a kid has made me the type of coach I am, and how I've learned from some of those things. But tons of bonds that we made along the way there, like tons of them. I can't even, all the stories I started thinking about, I was like, man, we could go on for hours and hours. I was gonna quickly tell one story that you might like, kind of describe the Duddy Story. And see, it's kind of weird. Not everyone that knows me now knows my nickname as Duddy, because it died off a little after my career was done, because the people I played with, we kind of went our separate ways. But throughout my whole hockey career, all my friends in the hockey world called me Duddy, and it all started in Lethbridge, and we would go out to the games from our dressing room to the ice, and there's this aisleway to the bench, and the fans would lean over and tap the players on the head of on their helmets and cheer them on. And as we would go out, there would be this one little boy who would constantly be yelling, and I don't want to be disrespectful, because I don't know if he was handicapped or if his speech was a little bit different, but
I think he had just a loud voice. I just remember, like,
maybe, and he was so young, he wasn't pronouncing my name, but he was just yelling, Duddy, 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 and he would smack people on the head as they went by. And
you know how I know this? You know how I remember it? Because at least you got a name, right? Because you were Duddy, 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 and he would hit you on the head. I was other goaltender. And he'd be like, Duddy, other goaltender. And he would just scream, other goaltender, other goaltender. He didn't know my name. Like, at least he was just a young, loud kid who was like yelling, Duddy, Duddy. But then he would come to me and just look at me and had no idea who the hell I was other than other goaltender. So you want to talk about like 30 years later, I still remember that like it was yesterday. So yes, you get the nickname out of it, but like I was nothing to this guy. Like that's the funny part about it all. Like, and it's, you're right. Your nickname, it stuck with you, right? Like
my whole hockey career is kind of, and it's the same as my last name. Everyone always said Imoo, and I never ever corrected anybody, and I just let Duddy stick through. So I didn't even, no one ever said either of my names correctly for my whole hockey career, but it was a fond memory for sure. Our junior years together. I want to quickly ask you, Jamie, about I've seen through time that you've picked up the guitar.
Yeah, I mean, but very very loose. Put it that way. Like loose is the word, because it's weird because I actually, and you remember this, you and I would sit there and I used to love watching you play the guitar, and you would sing, and, would get late into the night, and you would teach me a little bit of chords and stuff. And it was more about, as you know, I always feel that there's always been like a music and hockey and actors and actresses, like there's this entertainment crossover.
Oh, for
and
sure.
Every hockey player wants to be a rock star. Every rock star wants to be an athlete. Every actor wants to be like it. Everyone is always looking to intertwine. So, you were so good at the guitar. It was like that was my first introduction. I could play the drums a little bit and keep a beat, and I used it more to kind of just work on coordination.
Right.
But like guitar was always something that mesmerized me, because I was like, I would love to just learn enough to get by. And over the years, I've been able to do that. I took a little bit of lessons, but then fortunately through our contacts, and we've had some crossover with Chad from Nickelback, and I'm still friends with Tyler from Theory of a Dead Man, and guys like that. Like I pick up on little nuggets. And then, the other side of it is I've been able to, you buy a Gibson, you buy a nice guitar, right? So then you give yourself something nice to work with, and then you're like, okay, maybe I can work at this. So very loose still, to the point where even last year I got to play with a country band called the Reclaws. And,
I saw it. You posted that. Yeah.
Yeah. And they actually had an online concert last night, and I went out to Guelph when they were taping some stuff and did some intros with them. And it's just so neat to kind of, learn. I wish I had more. Like my daughter takes piano, and I sit and listen to the teacher while you're picking up on notes and stuff. Like that's more of like a bucket list. Like if I had a do-over in time, I would have stuck with like getting lessons and getting better at it. And as you know, I mean, you got so good at such a young age, like the more you work at it, just the more comfortable you are. And there's a point now where I'm at least, I can listen to a song and I know the chords and I can figure out strumming patterns, but I'll never be a lead guitarist. I'll never, I just don't have the time or the commitment to do it. But nowadays I feel like if you and I were going to jam, I could give you a little backing, like a CAD, like I could give you the chords. If you said, hey, this is the progression, I could figure it out, but I'll never get to that point where I'm actually any good, but it is a passion.
That's
and
cool.
Honestly, I've got a music room here at the house.
Yeah, I saw that.
Got drums. I got 7 or 8 guitars. I actually keep a guitar right here. I just bought it, like a Taylor. It's a nice Taylor.
Oh, nice.
And I keep it in my office here. But again,
cool
like
colors.
Yeah, you know what? That's what got me is I love the color, and it's such a clean sound. So I do play it if I'm got a half an hour at night and just kind of listen to some songs and learn. But ultimately, I'm no good. Like when people say, you play the guitar, I'm like, no, like that's like, it's like somebody saying, well, you play hockey. Well, yeah, I'm, a beer league guy saying he's an NHLer. Yeah. It's not the case.
Right.
So, yeah.
our buddy Corey Hirsch.
Yeah, Hershey. Yeah.
Yeah, I had him over here. He came over and I gave him a lesson. Did one lesson with him online, and then he actually drove all the way out here, and I gave him a lesson. And it he actually just texted me. He saw that I had posted that Chris Stapleton song I covered, and
Yeah.
he was like, I got to learn that. And I think he wants to come over again, but he's right at the beginning stages, and
Yeah.
it's really fun to see someone that really wants to try to learn, but is kind of at that beginning stage. But I think it's so cool that people, in their 40s and, are not afraid to say, screw it. I'm gonna learn this now, because I know things get harder to open up and learn when you're older. But for someone to do that, I think it's right now, especially, people need these kinds of things to kind of do something positive with their lives. You know what I mean?
Well, you need an escape. You need even the focus. Like that's if I got to a point where I had a little bit better schedule. So maybe my kids are at a different stage in their lives and stuff where I had, a couple hours to burn in a day, I would lay out a plan for myself, but I just, right now I'm just not there, but I do envision a time where I go through phases, right? Like, I'll tell a quick little funny story. I follow Brett Kissel on Instagram.
Right.
So I did a roast for Jason Strudwick. I don't know if you know Struddy, but he's a close friend of mine from Edmonton. So I did the roast to Jason Strudwick. I was the MC of it or whatever. And Brett happened to be there that night. And I like Brett's music. I think he's a really good, he's really passionate about his music. And I think he works hard. And what I love about Brett is he puts himself out there. Like you're at his house, like he'll play. Like he's one of those guys who is like, when people are around him, he'll be like, yeah, I'll sing a song for you. Yeah, no problem. Give me the guitar. Like he's cool. Like that. Like, yeah, I really love that. So he was there that night and I was sitting at the table with him. I got into the vodka a little bit. And so I'm kind of BSing him by the end. I'm like, dude, like, I got to be honest. Like, I love your music. I love what you're doing. He's like, hey, you know what? I'll be in Toronto. Let's stay in touch. We exchanged numbers. I didn't want to be like a creepy super fan or whatever, but we stayed in touch a little bit. He's really close to Jordan Eberle and he's a huge hockey fan. So it's kind of, there is again that crossover.
Right.
So I'm watching him on Instagram about 6 months ago, and he's singing a duet with Jessica. I think her name is Moskaduke. I don't want to butcher her name, but she's a Saskatchewan girl. She's got a fantastic voice. And they're singing Islands in the Stream. And it's a really, it's just a great, it was a great song. And so I'm watching Brett play and I text him. I'm like, hey, I hate to bother you, but I've been watching. What I do nowadays is just watch a guy play and then try and emulate it. Right. And, pick up the chords. I was like, I was watching you play and, I think I've got all the chords, but can you tell me what you do here? So he texts me right back and he's like, I'll send you a video later. And I was like, this guy's busy enough. Like I thought maybe he would dust me off or whatever. Right. I woke up to a 3-minute tutorial from him, because of the time change, of him saying, hey Noodles, this is how I play it. This is what, it's an E major and it
no way.
And he's like, this is what you do. And he was showing me and it was unreal. And
that's cool.
It just, it got me inspired. So then I learned that. So I got to learn that song and it was kind of cool. That type of stuff, that's I guess the luxury that you and I have had, that where, through our hockey contacts or through the people we've met along the way, you get to kind of experience a little bit different things. Right. So I love that stuff because I did reach out to him. So it was kind of creepy of me to be like, hey, do you mind, telling me how you did that song or whatever? But I love that stuff. And so I'll always kind of stick with the guitar, but I just I know my lane. I'm no good, but I at least enjoy it. And I admit.
Oh, that's awesome. Man. Go. No, I thought, I thought that, always thought that it would be great for anybody while they're playing even.
Yeah.
To have that, because, you know, the stress levels and the things that we go through as hockey players or professional athletes, the tension is quite high. And I think it helps. It helped me all through my career and my life, even, to have that outlet, you focus. And then it really does, because you start to have to focus hard on learning.
Right.
You totally forget about hockey for that time, however long you're practicing and learning. I think it's huge. And I think it was huge for a guy like Hershey, because you know how he had battled, some demons and
he's got some mental health, but he's a big advocate for it, which is great.
For sure.
You know,
and it's great for people that have those challenges. I think it's awesome. And that's why I'm always willing to spend some time with Hershey and teach him some guitar riffs and stuff. He wants to learn that Starting Over song from Chris Stapleton. And it's going to be a bit of a challenge. I think it's a little bit.
It's too advanced for him, but you're going to have to dumb it down and make it like 3 or 4 chords and just figure it out.
It'll be fun for sure. No, the people the whole point I mentioned about my podcast, I'm going to have on some musicians, and this isn't a hockey podcast. We talked a lot of hockey stuff today, but it was more about friendship for me, to tell you the truth. This was about a friendship pod, but I want to have on some musicians. I've got a few in mind that I'm going to try to get on here, because that's kind of where my passions lie. You mentioned hockey players want to be rock stars, rock stars want to be hockey players, or whatever. I tell you right now, 100%. If someone could have given me a choice from a genie bottle, I for sure would have picked rock star over hockey player, for sure.
Well, yeah, because you know what? I'm the same way. Because when I get out of bed in the morning and I'm like, okay, what's hurting today? Because you know what? You had 8,000 shots off of this shoulder and this elbow, and your fingers are then closed properly. And I'm the same way. I don't look back on it with regret, because obviously we're proud of our careers and proud of our paths, but it's more, I envision what could have been, right? Yeah. Like, you look back and you go, oh, that's pretty cool. And like, I honest to God, I'll tell you a funny story, because when I work out in the mornings, like I've got a gym here. So I do a little workout, a little sweat on the elliptical and stuff like that. But I'll get caught down rabbit holes of YouTube, and just randomly, like the other day, no joke, I punch on, I see Robert Palmer. Do you remember the song Simply Irresistible?
Totally.
So I've got a live version of him like playing, and I'm like I'm on the elliptical, like just clanking along to Simply Irresistible. And I'm like, I'm envisioning myself like I'm Robert Palmer 20 years ago on stage, like that could have been me. But I'm like, that guy actually has a great voice. Guitar, like I'm watching his guitar, so I'm like, there's no chance I could do that, what he's doing. So it's funny, because I think in our world, like people wanted to be goalies in the NHL or wanted to play in the Olympics or play in pro leagues. And I'm like, would have been nice to just walk out on stage with a guitar. Right. And there's 20,000. I mean, yesterday's rabbit hole was Enter Sandman, Metallica, and you literally have James Hetfield sitting there, and there's 80,000 people yelling and screaming, and I'm like, just to be in that moment, and it's you, like, it's amazing. Like I always wish, maybe in another life I could have done that.
One of the things well, at least for me personally, when I played the game, especially earlier on in my career, and it never died, but I would get these goosebumps or butterflies, this rush, a euphoric rush, if you played a great game and the crowd's cheering your name. Like, I'm not going to lie, that was a big motivator for me. I sucked balls when there was nobody in the stands and we were playing a little shithole. It wasn't me.
Yeah.
I was I loved the entertainment of it all. And as it went along, I got really more about the win and for the team and winning the championships and all that. But when I was younger, I'm not going to lie, I loved that feeling. And that's one of the things I think for me as a dreamer, wannabe rock star, that rush of the crowd. Like whenever I see it on YouTube, I watch them all the time too when I'm working out, the AC/DC in front of 120,000 people, and you can see
Right.
the whole crowd, and and uh, and Angus Young going down the catwalk with
Yeah.
100,000 people. Like, to me, that is it for sure.
That's power. That's
For
power.
sure, for
Yeah.
sure. When I saw you and you posted that one thing with you with that band,
With the Red Claws. Yeah.
yeah, and it's just a small little thing, but how is that feeling? The nervousness, I'm sure, but that
Oh
feeling,
yeah.
it's kind of a
Yeah.
rush, right?
It is. And I did sound check with them, and I've never worn the ears even. So the
Right.
bud, like I'll, if I go to Nickelback or something, they'll give me the buds and I sit at the side and listen to, their raw feed. But like I've never like played guitar with a tight band, like an actual professional band,
Right.
and had the bloods in. So and what's weird about that whole experience, the song was Feels Like That, and I'd listened to it 1,000 times, and I knew it inside and out, but I couldn't get it in my house to sound exactly like it sounds. And I was losing my mind. I'm like, what am I doing here? Like, I'm like, it's here. I'm watching Stuart, the guitarist,
Right.
play, and I'm like, something's missing. Well, I didn't realize it was drop D. So I couldn't, I was like, I would play it for my wife, and she's like, no, that doesn't sound right. And I'm like, I got to play with them tomorrow. Like, I'm like cramming for an exam, and I can't get it to sound right. So when I first get there, I talked to their manager, and I was like, I need 5 minutes with your guitarist, because I'm like, I know what I'm doing here, but I'm like, I can't get it to sound right. So they're like, oh, here's the guitar, here's the buds, and he goes, yeah, I'll tune it, I'll drop D it for you. And I was like, well, what do you mean? He goes, well, it's drop D. I was like, oh, so
Right.
I start playing the exact same thing, and it just clicks. So they're warming up, and I can hear them singing, and it's amateur hour for me. Like I go in there, they're wearing jeans and t-shirts, and I got a suit on because I'm calling a game in an hour. So I've got a suit on, I'm all stiff, I've got my guitar, and I'm playing, one finger drop D, and got the 10th fret, and it starts sounding, and I'm like, this is cool. But then I'm nervous because I'm like, I'm playing along, and he's telling me, okay, like the timing. So Stuart comes over, he starts singing, and he's like, hey, you got the strumming pattern. That's great. Because I think they thought like they're going to get some idiot, which I am, but like some guy who literally didn't know what he was doing. So I'm a 2 out of 10, I'm not a 0. So I at least knew what I was doing a bit. So I start playing, and the whole time, like, comfort level on the guitar, I'm sure you could speak to this. Like, when I watch Richie Sambora like play the guitar, you're not even looking at the guitar. He's talking to people he's playing, right? He knows exactly. Right. I'm like staring at the frets, like, and I'm like, okay, now I'm starting to get comfortable. So then I look up and keep going, and I'm starting to move. So I felt, and we did it 3 times, and they filmed all 3 times. And outside of like, there was one, I guess, progression or whatever, where I was supposed to drop because it like the music stops and then they move on. But I kept playing through it because I like missed it. And I could see them, the brother and sister, look at each other. They're like, oh God, we got one of these guys. But for the most part, it was cool. And if you could take that energy and then just inject it into your veins, like that's a high, right? Like that's
for sure.
It's such a rush, but I did sound check with Theory of a Dead Man once, and it was that song Hate My Life, which is like D-A-G. Like it's a really, the chords, like Tyler was like, yeah, and Dave, the guitarist, was like, you can use mine. Tyler can play the lead. And, I understood everything. But what happened is they had some contest winners that allowed them, there was like 50 contest winners.
To watch
them do sound check. And Tyler goes, all of a sudden, like I come on stage and I'm playing with him. I'm looking at Tyler and I look and there's people watching. I'm like, oh my God, like this is not going to go well. But Tyler was able to carry me through. And then he apologized to them afterwards, like, sorry. He goes, you want to think of a contest winner? He's like, I got one here. I got to deal with this guy. So it's kind of funny. But a couple of times I've been lucky enough to have that, that small adrenaline.
Yeah.
And just see what it would really look like,
Yeah, no, it's definitely in my dreams all the time, constantly, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, actually, my first podcast I did with Ian,
Yeah.
I intro with something that I wrote, and then I outro with the same song, and then I think I'm gonna do this on every show. I'm gonna leave the pod with a song, just something I pick that's not copywritten, and I'm going to try to find some indie stuff. But I did the first podcast episode, and I exited with one of my youngest son's songs.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's pretty sick. It's pretty sick, and
That's
it's
cool.
really raw too. He only did a guitar track and vocal track, so it's very White Stripes. Very raw. But I'm going to be dropping it today, so it's good timing that you and I are doing this one now. But so you might want to check it out. It's at the end. His song is it's pretty cool, but it's neat. I played it, the ending of the podcast for him, and I didn't tell him that I was going to do this.
Oh yeah.
And I was going to debut one of his songs. He was pretty stoked. It was pretty cool.
That's cool. That's awesome. Yeah. So a few of your kids have your musical ability, or just one?
Yeah. The only one, well, my daughter doesn't have any of that side. She's the loveliest of everybody, but sports wise and music artistically, not as much. But she's the best person of us all.
Yeah.
My oldest doesn't have the patience. He was talented in all that stuff and kind of went away from it all. Jonah, the middle one, boy, and my youngest are both, Jonah, I don't know if you've seen his shoes that he does. Yeah. So he's got the artistic side from me, and he can play guitar. My youngest, Mac, he's doing a lot more of the guitar and music. He's all over my recording track stuff that I have hooked up, and he's getting right into it. He's got a couple buddies and they do band stuff, and
that's awesome.
He's actually really good. No, it's pretty cool to see them. I think it's just for them as people too. I think we talked about it. It's great for you to kind of stay grounded, but he's pretty good.
That's great.
I thank you so much, buddy, for doing this with me. I am glad. It's such short notice too that you.
Anytime, buddy. I feel like we'll have to do a couple of these where we maybe do a Saturday night and sit with a beer here and just kind of just get caught up over time. I mean, you have to chop them up. They might get lengthy, but it'd just be nice to just, we can head down any path. I love just BS, and it's just great to get caught up too,
Well, that's the whole point of this, the pod. I'm not, I told you right off the hop, it wasn't a goalie coaching podcast. It was more about life and friendships and shit like that. Before we exit here, I got 3 questions for you.
Sure.
And I'm going to start to do this with all of them, I think. I never did it with Ian, but I just thought of this because it's in what I like and love and interests me. So first thing is your favorite genre of music.
Oh, I you know what? I just say classic rock, like old school rock. Like I have no problem Bon Jovi. Like any day, like I could jump into the car and I would have no problem with the classic rock or just like mainstream rock. Yeah. Cool.
Well, that'll lead into it's all music based. So question number 2 is your favorite band. Can you pick one off the top of your head?
You know what? It's funny. Like I have I'm pretty close to Chad from Nickelback, and everyone knows that like I've always enjoyed their music. I can listen to, like, I can go back and listen to something early on or something late, and I have no problem with them. I love Metallica. I love Bon Jovi. Like mainstream, and give me people that can play guitars and sing. That's what it is. Like, that's not, too mixed up. Is that you call it? Like, the music that's been, spit through the computer 3,000 times. Like I'm fine with that. So just the mainstream. Yep.
And question 3, what are you rocking right now on your playlist? Boom. You got to answer me right away.
On my player, well, this morning it was Robert Palmer, Simply Irresistible. I'm not lying. Like, it was, it's just, I got into that. But honestly, last week it was the Go-Go's live live at Central Park. Like,
no way.
I get caught down these rabbit holes, and I'm like, because they had like a Go-Go's movie out, like, whatever happened to them, and like, because they're all mid-60s now. So you look back, and they were like,
Belinda Carlisle.
But they originally started as like a punk band. So I saw the movie, and I started going down the rabbit hole of like, hey, let's take a look at the Go-Go. So honestly, I'm all over the map when it comes to music. To the point where I listened to Beer Can from the Reclaws just before we came on, because I was trying to learn it on the guitar. So it's mainstream rock and country for sure.
Cool. No, that's cool. I think that's the best way to be as far as a fan of music is, don't close yourself off. And explore. Like, obviously some of the twang country I have a problem with, but for example, my favorite album right now and my favorite artist right now is Chris Stapleton.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Like, that dude, he can wail singing wise, and he can literally, he's not a shredder, but he's an awesome guitarist, and the stuff he writes, it crosses over for me on the country singer, but he's a blues rock icon to me right now. He's awesome. But it's interesting how people sometimes are like 100% country or 100% this, or I like to listen to so much different things. It's cool that you mentioned the Go-Go's.
Yeah, which is like way, kind of off the beaten path, but it's just, that's kind of like, I'll get caught in something and I'm like, I got to watch this, it's like, it's just like, watch Live Aid and you're like, okay, there's that 20-minute Queen performance of Freddie Mercury. You're like, this is brilliant. Like, and then you start to go, oh, well, that guy was a really good artist. Oh, and there's Sting. Okay, let's watch some of the Police live. And then I'm 90s music and stuff like, it's not that I don't like today's music, because I think a lot of today's artists are very talented. It's just different. And you mentioned crossovers and stuff like that. I like guys who are just talented enough that, hey, I'm really good on the guitar. I've got a real big range of voice. And, so I'm not lying. I'm looking down my little list here, and it's like Prince, but then it's Limp Bizkit, and then it's Bon Jovi, and I'm watching Steven Tyler. It was like celebrities that surprised buskers. I don't know if you ever saw that. Steven Tyler's in Russia, and there's a guy, singing his song, so he walks up and sings with him. Like, that stuff's really cool to me, So
you really do the YouTube rabbit hole.
I do, because if I'm doing cardio every day right here, we're stuck at home for 9 months. Like, it's something to, it's not just the same song every day. So I'm like, hey, let's look at this. So let's, something will suggest something. We'll look at, the other day it was the Jonas Brothers. I'm like, I think they could sing. You know what? Let's try it out. And it was a 3-minute clip. I watched that, and then ended up into Hanson and Bop, and then it went over to. So I was like, okay, I'm in teen bands here, late '90s In Sync and all of that. So it's kind of funny. Like, that's the type of stuff that I enjoy. But I always kind of come back to the,
classic
just
rock.
mainstream, classic rock.
Yeah. Well, my roots, the metal days and back when you know me, I was like hard rock big time. But there's so many paths that you meet people and different types of friends that have different types of tastes in music. I've learned, I remember my wife introduced me to The Cure, and at first I was like, oh, this stuff, it sucks ass. But as I opened up, I went to see them a couple times, and I was like, wow, and then it just kind of blossomed from there. But I remember back in the day, if you weren't a hard rocker, you weren't worthy.
Yeah, that was kind of the roots. And I mean, I think I was just more mainstream, but I respected it. Like that's where, those bands and they've lasted the test of time too, right? Like, you could still turn on one of those songs and you're still enjoying it as much today as you were back then. Yeah. That's how I feel. Yeah. So
awesome. Well, Jamie, again, thanks so much for doing this, buddy. And we'll definitely do this again and maybe do it a different way, maybe with a beer or two, and shoot the shit again. Say hi to the fam. All the best to your wife and kids. Tell Steph I said hi. And peace to you, brother.
Oh. All right. Thanks, buddy. Love you. We'll see you soon.
Cool. I'd like to thank Jamie for coming on the podcast today. I had a ton of fun chatting with an old friend and sharing a few of our old stories. I can't say enough about how important it is to stay connected, especially in these times we're in right now. So if you have some time, man, pick up the phone and connect with someone you care about. There you go, my deep thoughts by Jack Handy for all you SNL lovers. If you want to check out Jamie on TV or radio, you can listen to him on TSN 1050 radio on the show Overdrive, weekdays from 4 to 7 p.m. Eastern. You can also watch him on TSN on the same show. He does all kinds of other TV work, so just look for the guy with the frickin' massive ears and you'll know it's Jamie. I really want to thank everyone for listening today, and in doing so, I'll leave you with a chill little indie tune from Makito called Time Sensitive. Happy holidays, everyone, and God bless.
Watching blades and ice go crash, and my gut starts to sink. I asked for a little bit of his name, and he said Jake. Eating shit and ice cream cones, and my bones start to break. Thank God for my new friend, oh yeah. On the ice going side to side, now it's us on the blades. Call myself his right hand man for faith. Fast forward through a child's eyes, and it's happiness I see. Brings me back to times of love and peace. Memories come flush with glee, and it's you I see. Brings me back to a child's memories. Eating shit and ice cream cones, and my bones start to break. Thank God for my new friend, oh yeah. said, hey, oh yeah, where are you now? Come back, take away this eternal frown. And I said, hey,